Well, good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Henry McCorkle, and I am the Director of Global Membership with the Middle States Association. And I want to begin by welcoming everyone to today's open house. Before I continue, I do want to let everyone know that this event is being recorded today for future use. So if this makes anyone uncomfortable, you are certainly welcome to exit the webinar at this time. Also, given the fact that today's presentation is a webinar, if you have any questions, we encourage you to type them into the chat. And we will have some time to address questions towards the end of the presentation. If for whatever reason we run out of time and we're not able to get to your question today, then we will be sure to follow up with you following today's event. Today, you're going to get a chance to hear from a panel of educators representing some schools and school districts that are accredited by the Middle States Association. Our four fantastic panelists today are Dr. Ron Davis, Assistant Superintendent with the Mount Lebanon School District in Pittsburgh, Mr. Bill Fleming, Principal at Hoover Elementary School in the Bergenfield Public Schools in New Jersey, Dr. Janika Newbill, Director of Special Projects with the School District of Philadelphia, and Dr. Will Smith, Superintendent of the Point Pleasant Beach School District in Point Pleasant Beach, New Jersey. I know you're all excited to jump into our panel, but before we do so, I'd just like to share a brief overview and history of Middle States to provide some context for today's presentation. So the Middle States Association has been around for over 130 years. And throughout the association's long history, Middle States has been helping school leaders establish and reach their goals, develop strategic plans, promote staff development, and advance student achievement. As a not-for-profit agency, our goal is to help each school and school district become the best version of themselves through a process that fosters growth and improvement. We believe that education is important to the quality of life in our global society. We believe that all schools can achieve excellence in both teaching and learning through innovation. We believe that the process of self-assessment, external validation, and accountability is essential to school improvement. And we believe that accreditation is a collaborative partnership grounded in professionally recognized and accepted research-based standards. We also believe strongly in the importance of peer review. All of our accreditation visits are led by volunteers, the majority of whom are from other schools that Middle States accredits. One benefit of pursuing accreditation with the Middle States Association is the opportunity to participate on accreditation visits to other schools, which many of our members say is an extremely valuable professional development opportunity. As an institutional accreditor, we utilize a set of standards to affirm to the public a school or school district's commitment to continuous improvement in all areas. Everything from teaching and learning components, such as curriculum and assessment, to facilities and finances, to governance and leadership. For many years, Middle States was a regional accreditor, meaning the association only accredited schools in the Mid-Atlantic region of the US. However, today, Middle States accredits schools and school districts across the United States and internationally. From our headquarters in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, we work with approximately 2,600 member institutions in nearly all 50 states, as well as more than 100 countries worldwide. An important and distinct segment of our membership are public schools. Today, Middle States accredits about 400 public schools and about 20 public school districts, which account for about 15% of our total membership. We're excited about the opportunity to work with more public schools and school districts and help them become the best version of themselves through the process of accreditation. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Lorna Ferris, who's going to talk more in depth about MSA's process of accreditation for schools and school districts, and to also talk about our programs of distinction. So Dr. Ferris, I will turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Mr. McCorkle. For new schools, MSA's process occurs in two phases: candidacy followed by accreditation. The first step to candidacy involves the school completing a one-page registration form. Once MSA receives the form, it will send the school a candidacy application to complete. The application introduces the school to MSA standards and asks the school to provide information regarding where it currently stands in relation to those standards. After receiving a school's completed candidacy application, MSA reviews the information and sets up a one-day candidacy visit. During the visit, the school's Associate Vice President of Accreditation will discuss the application and then later make a recommendation to MSA's president whether the school has the organizational capacity to become accredited. After presidential approval, MSA sends the school an offer letter of candidacy. Once the school signs and returns the letter, it is considered a candidate for accreditation with Middle States and can begin the self-study process immediately, which marks the second phase of the overall process, the accreditation portion. The accreditation process is a very organic one in which schools have the opportunity to engage diverse stakeholders of the learning community in improvement planning and growth. Through self-study, schools establish a vision of their future by mining data, collaborating, setting objectives, and finally developing action plans. The process typically takes anywhere from 12 to 18 months, followed by a visit from a team of objective peer educators who have volunteered their time to verify the school's self-study and evidence. The team focuses primarily on MSA standards, which include foundations, the school's mission, core values, and profile of graduates, student well-being, teaching and learning, governance and leadership, and resources. Overall, the team's visit adds to the validity of the school's hard work. Following the team visit, MSA has a multi-tier review process for all team reports to ensure consistency, objectivity, and quality. Recommendations are made by the visiting team, the Middle States staff, an advisory committee, and the membership and accreditation committee of the Middle States commissions before the full commissions makes an accreditation decision. Schools visited in the fall are presented to the commissions in the spring, and schools visited in the spring are presented to the commissions in the fall. Once a school becomes accredited, its term of accreditation is 7 years. As MSA offers schools various protocols to choose from for self-study, some have opted for a systems-wide approach. This protocol is ideal for school districts that are interested in accrediting all of their schools or a portion of their schools at one time. The system-wide accreditation process is similar to the accreditation process for an individual school. However, the primary difference is that the system-wide process is led by district personnel and is focused on developing a plan for all participating schools to achieve a set of goals that the district identifies. Many districts choose to pursue a systems process because it creates a sense of cohesiveness among schools, since all or many of them are participating in the same accreditation process. A systems process may also help a school district ensure curriculum alignment, open lines of communication among school leaders, or identify and begin to address disparities that may exist between schools within the district. Excuse me. In addition, there is also a financial incentive in pursuing a systems process. If multiple schools of a school district are accredited with MSA, then each accredited school receives a percentage discount on their annual dues. Some of the panelists today represent school districts that have participated in a systems accreditation process with Middle States, and they will certainly have more information to share with you about their experience. Ultimately, whether a school district chooses to pursue an individual accreditation process or a system-wide process, MSA's objective is the same: to help schools and districts reach their full potential and achieve their preferred future. Finally, schools may also apply for an MSA program of distinction. These programs represent various areas in which schools may be exceptionally strong. Programs of distinction are available in the following areas: early childhood education, music, school counseling, visual arts, athletics, STEM, service learning, and world languages. Schools interested in applying to any of these programs should contact their Associate Vice President directly for more details. Now on to our panel. Please introduce yourself and share a bit about your experience with MSA accreditation and the value you see in MSA's accreditation process. Let's start off with Dr. Davis.
Good afternoon, Dr. Ferris, Mr. McCorkle, everyone who's joining us. It's great to be with you. And thank you for the opportunity to be part of this panel, and I look forward to the conversation with our colleagues that are here online. So a little bit about my experience with Middle States Association. It began in 2007 when I was the high school principal here in Mount Lebanon, and we had a site visit team come to Mount Lebanon to re-accredit our school. And then from there, I participated on a number of visitation teams as a visitation member. And I have chaired probably 6 or so visitation teams to various schools. In more recent years, our school district has pursued the program of distinction that you've described. We have it in school counseling. We've been awarded in music and visual arts. And I was on the committee that helped shape the athletic program of distinction. And our school was the first to go through the protocol. So we were honored to be able to provide feedback on that process. And I guess the last piece about my involvement in the last couple of years, I've served as a commission on the Middle States Commission as a commissioner. So to your questions about how what value do we think Middle States brings? I think I would offer 5 different thoughts for you to consider. I think it's valuable for us in terms of the collaboration that it offers. There's a lot of internal collaboration amongst our faculty, staff, parents, students, school board members. A great opportunity to use the tool as a way for us to talk about improvement of our organization. So that would be my first, is I think collaboration brings a lot of value in the process. Second, I think it's partnerships. I really do appreciate the visiting team and the partnerships that come to our school and the feedback that they give us. The peer partners that we have and the educational insights that they bring always helps improve our organization. And I know the motto of every visiting team is to leave us in a place to be able to grow. And that certainly is meaningful to us. The other value, I think the third value is this opportunity to reflect. Our organizations are so busy. It really does provide the opportunity to stop, take a breath, and reflect a little bit about how your organization is behaving and delivering instruction to students. And it's an opportunity then to think about how you can make that better. It is an opportunity, I think, to truly reflect. And just as you're reflecting, then I think it's also my fourth value. I think it's an opportunity to project a little bit. As you talked about the 7-year accreditation window, it's an opportunity that you can project your desired improvements over a span of time. And you think about incremental improvements every year. And then lastly, I think the standards that Middle States provides gives us an opportunity to benchmark our performance against some very high quality educational standards. So I would say collaboration, partnership, reflection, projection, and benchmarking. I think that's the value that it brings for us.
Wow, well, that's very comprehensive and very true. Thank you very much, Dr. Davis. Mr. Fleming, would you like to offer your insights regarding that question?
Hello, everyone. I'm very grateful to be here. My name is Bill Fleming. I am currently the principal of Hoover Elementary School in Bergenfield, New Jersey. Our district went through a systems accreditation back in 2013 and then re-accreditation, I think last year in 2020. And I served as the internal coordinator for our school district in the process of going for the systems approach. And that's how I became involved once our application was accepted and we were approved to apply back in 2013. I'll explain in the later question about like how we set up and had all of our constituents participating, but I helped facilitate that. Later on, after we received our reaccreditation, I served on a visiting team with other schools, and I do echo what Dr. Fairness was saying, or Mr. McCorkle, about it was great professional development going and visiting other schools. And I think Dr. Davis really said it very well about the benefits of becoming Middle States accredited. I know for a principal in a school, you know, you can sometimes in your district be isolated and just very laser light focused on your building. But one of the benefits of the Middle States accreditation is working across the district with all your colleagues in pre-K through 12 to really focus our district and our district goals. And since they are, as Dr. Davis mentioned, 7-year goals, it really helps to focus your planning as a principal, but also collaboration amongst with your colleagues in the district for how you're moving ahead in reaching your goals and the focus on the action plan. I also think collaboration with Middle States has been tremendous. And I really feel like for us as a middle school system-wide approach, it has created a common language among everyone in the district, not just administrators, but the teachers and the parents who have served on and supported the process. And we really are very actively aware of our goals that we set for ourselves and are constantly reflecting on those during administrative cabinet meetings or school PLCs. So it becomes actually part of just how we function and helps us be goal-oriented as we move forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fleming. Can we hear from Dr. Newble?
Good afternoon, everyone, all of the panelists and everyone with Middle States that have joined us. And I would be remiss to not even say thank you to the team members from our school district that has also joined us. My experience with the Middle States accreditation process began 5 years ago, where we had some high schools accredited, but not all. And in our district, we have 54 high schools. And then I was asked as the district person to be the liaison to support all of our high schools to become accredited. And at that time, we thought it would take around till 2028 to accomplish it. But with the leadership of Dan Rufo, who is our accreditation officer, we were able to make a switch, because we began by individually accrediting our high schools. And then the decision was made to switch to achieving excellence system-wide. Also during this time, I have had the experience of chairing visitation teams and also serving on teams. I will say, if you are interested, what you learn from chairing a team or serving on a team is what not to do when it's your turn for a visit. So all of those notes I took very well and brought that right back to our schools so that we could successfully accredit them. What I would say though, about the process itself, what I've enjoyed, because there are 54 high schools, you really do get to know your schools. You build a rapport with them, especially since we're the 8th largest school district. I find the pleasure of supporting them and meeting all of their needs so that they do not feel as if they are going through this process by themselves. In addition, another thing that we did as a part of supporting our schools with the accreditation process, I was fortunate where a professional learning specialist, Ms. Moyer, has been part of the district internal coordinator process with me, which is good, especially when there are 54 schools. What I like is that we guide them through the process, we review their self-studies, we take them step by step. And then one of the things, since our school has really began to shine a light on equity, that we are liking the most about this process, because we have encountered this, where colleges and universities have reached out to us to verify if whether or not our high schools are accredited with regards to accepting students in their programs. And at times, if we had to tell someone at a college or university, no, that school was not accredited, we are now removing that barrier, because what some high schools aren't aware of, colleges can refuse admission if students did not attend an accredited high school. So we feel it's giving our students a better footing and an equal opportunity to be accepted versus coming from a non-accredited high school. Another thing that we like about Middle States is the design of our annual school plans connects with the progress for improvement over time. So that is the plan for growth and improvement that all of our schools are developing as a part of the process. It's aligning everything, but what we like with the process with Middle States is that the schools go deeper in the weeds. Often they develop the school improvement plan, which is annually, but knowing that you're looking at a 7-year accreditation, it allows our schools to really establish specific long-range goals so that it can be monitored effectively at both the district and the school level. And the last thing I will mention, we sometimes have high turnover rates in large urban districts. What I really like about the self-study process, if a principal changes or an AP changes or any leadership team members change, all they would have to do is view the most recent self-study to be able to understand clearly what staff, parents, community stakeholders, and leadership members have established as long-range goals for their schools. That's my answer.
Wow. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Newbill. If now we could hear from Dr. Smith.
Sorry, there we go. Good afternoon. I'm so impressed by my fellow panelists here. They've said so much of what I have shared a similar experience and become very impressed with the Middle States process as a tool really for not only school assessment, but school reform. As far as my pathway into Middle States, one of my most important experiences was with my prior district. I was a high school principal, like one of our other panelists had said, and we went through a systems approach in quite a sizable district. And I really saw how in a district that was, at that point it's 8 different schools, so a good size, not Philadelphia size, but good size, how it really unified our administrative conversations and the goals of each school. But what I can say in my very small district now, two buildings, so a fairly simple district from a structural standpoint, is the same as held true. We've been able to unify and organize our focus, our ambitions, and that conversation with the community, with the Board of Education, with our teachers and admin staff is extremely valuable, especially in the current climate of schools where a lot of things are coming at you and there's a lot of impulse to change rapidly. The structure of a Middle States goal system, a plan of action for 7 years really keeps you on a set of rails that is helpful to, again, keep the focus and keep everybody moving towards the same ultimate goals. I think somebody mentioned it before, the value of becoming part of the Middle States kind of team, so to speak, and be even, have your professional staff go out and do visits is an amazing professional development. I agree with Bill Fleming, and I was actually on a team that came to his district, and even just in a handful of days, being able to visit a colleague school or a school that has, a different demographic setup or size than your district has, the conversations are really unmatched from a professional growth standpoint. The other thing is you really do get to celebrate what is successful about your school. So it's a good time to kind of take an inventory, especially when as school leaders, we're often focused on the gaps, the things that are wrong, the areas for improvement, the things that we need to build on. It's helpful every once in a while to say, yeah, but we do this pretty well. We do this pretty well. We do this pretty well. And then move on to what you need to work on. Because I think sometimes we can get mired in just the negatives of the gaps, the areas we need to close. And I think the last thing I'd say is, and I think Dr. Ferris, you mentioned it, but the simple first step of revising your foundational documents, your things like your mission statement, to do that as a collaborative process with your community, even if you're changing a punctuation mark or 3 words, gets a whole new set of eyes. And typically in a 7-year cycle, you can have families who, move out of an elementary school in that time. And it's a whole new set of families who participate in your school. It gets a whole new set of eyes on what it is that really is your rallying cry for your district. And that's got value in it. I mean, you can put mission statements up in your classrooms, you can, put them up on your website, but when you get your hands down in the process of creating, revising, updating your foundational documents and really saying what really matters, what is it that we're chasing, that can be tremendously impactful on your long range planning. So for us, the Middle States process is our strategic planning tool, and the 7-year window is just about right. So very positive experiences for me as well, just like my fellow panelists.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. I'd have to agree that, it does bring forth cohesiveness. And also when looking at the foundation documents, everyone has an equal voice. And that is very empowering for, stakeholders to realize that they have a voice and that they can make a change and even improve the school in a variety of ways. Okay, so I'd like to turn it over to this next question we have. The accreditation process requires the involvement of staff, students, parents, and other community members throughout the self-study and team visit. Can you share a bit about how different constituents were involved throughout your school or district's accreditation process? And we could start with Mr. Fleming.
Hi, everyone. So the way we structured our approach to the systems accreditation process was we first, using all the resources that Middle States will provide you once you begin this process, you do go through a training at Middle States for how to go about the accreditation process, and then they provide you with extensive amounts of resources and documents to kind of guide you. So we set up a timeline of events. Since we were doing a systems-wide approach, we had 2 internal coordinators. They established, we used a system, since we are a Google district, we used Google folders and set up specific areas where we were going to just do like the infrastructure first in the background. So we did like a folder for each of the standards where we were going to provide our evidence. Then we began collecting the evidence, and we prepared surveys for the parents, students, staff in the district. So different surveys for different constituents. And then those were translated into our constituents' native languages. They were sent home. We encouraged during back to school nights, during parent teacher conferences, we had stations set up so people could fill out the Google surveys. We wanted to make sure access wasn't an issue for a lot of our community members. And so we got very good data from that. And then we established our school teams. So principals spoke with their staff and explained the process, and staff members who were interested, we invited them to a meeting. And from there, we created our school teams and also our committee teams. So we broke each standard from Middle States into a team, and then there was a chair of the team, which usually was a school administrator from the district who may be directly involved in that. So the counseling portion, for example, the director of counseling was the chair, but then we invited teachers who were interested, or maybe counselors that were going to be part of what types of data they were going to collect. And then we disaggregated and we analyzed and disaggregated the data we collected from the surveys. We use that to kind of pinpoint areas that maybe we need to focus on in growth, and our committees then looked at the evidence we had. We gathered that for the committee, and then from there, our school team was able to really kind of do like a deep dive into our district and from what we were hearing from all of these different constituents, and that's how we then created our goals. And then we went for internal coordinator training for action plan training with Middle States in Philadelphia, completed the action plan and submitted it for technical review based on all of the input of all of our constituents, and then got prepared for our visit in March, which Dr. Smith was actually part of our visiting team. And over those days, the committees, parents, students were invited in and met with the Middle States Accreditation team and were interviewed and gave input into all the process. And then the results, the chair of the visitation would submit that to Middle States and the commissioners, and then the commissioners approved it. So that was how we involved all those constituents throughout the whole process.
Thank you, Mr. Fleming. Dr. Newbill?
So ditto to everything that Mr. Fleming said, because it's pretty much the same exact process that we utilized in our district. I will just speak to a couple of differences in that, for example, as part of the process that Mr. Fleming mentioned, schools do participate in the surveys, the Middle States surveys for parents, stakeholders, students, as well as staff. What we have done is we have also included focus groups as a part of gathering data to support input in the Middle States process. Also, our school internal coordinators allow our school advisory councils that have at least a minimum of 5 parents on that particular council at each high school in the district to provide additional input in the Middle States process. We also last year did bring on an external coordinator who had experience from previous accreditation agencies, and she worked directly with us as the district internal coordinators along with the schools to provide a more wider lens of providing input in the process. Also, our district planning team is comprised of core 37 folks representing 25 different offices. And then we do have contributing members within, I want to say, different areas of offices that are providing input. And another thing that we did do, which was different from what we started in 2017, last year, we made sure that even the Board of Education had representation on our district planning team, so that as they were developing their objectives of what they feel the district should be moving toward, they also gained a greater insight around the process for Middle States. And that's a little, so everything that Mr. Fleming said, and then what I just added.
Wow, that's a very inclusive, as we know the system's protocol can be. Well, thank you. Dr. Smith?
Yeah, wow, these guys are fantastic. I agree, ditto, both previous speakers. One thing I didn't mention before that I do think factors into our experience with the accreditation process is our district was undergoing a superintendent search at the time the accreditation process had begun. So in fact, we had an interim superintendent who was kind of leading the start of this process. We were queuing up for contract negotiations in the district. So kind of there was a time where a lot of people were paying a lot of attention and had a lot of interest in, you know, the future of the district and where it was headed. That was fantastic for me to, and I mean, it was a little awkward to enter in the middle of the accreditation process, but from the standpoint of using that as a tool to understand where we are, where people wanted to be, have a little bit of input in that. You know, I had a student in the district, my own child, so I knew a little bit from a parental perspective where you know, people wanted to go. That, you know, most people would say, put off your accreditation, or, you know, that might be a hurdle till you get things settled. I think it was actually an asset for our journey, and certainly for my own specific journey. I would echo everything with respect to the committees for each standard. The surveying obviously kind of takes care of itself as part of the Middle States process. But we found having, even with a smaller district, having a committee for each standard by volunteers first, and then ultimately, you know, growing those groups as best we could, that worked well. What's happened since the accreditation process is that those teams have still stayed in place, remained in place. They've largely moved internal. They're not quite as reliant on parent input as much as grade level or you know, subject area teams that kind of have picked up these pieces and check in twice annually on our goals. But it's really, as Dr. Newbill just said, it's kind of begun to involve the Board of Education a little bit more now, because our accreditation process established those kind of core goals we wanted to work towards, and those effectively become the framework from the district goals that I set every year, and for our building goals, and for the teachers to then say, okay, that goal I can see processed in my classroom this way. And so it goes from, you know, throughout the stakeholder groups in our system. So I don't have too much new to add on the front side of it, because I think Mr. Fleming and Dr. Newbill hit that pretty well, but I think those other pieces maybe hopefully keep somebody from thinking that the process in the middle of other things going on in your district, it might be the wrong time. I don't think there is a wrong time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Smith. Dr. Davis?
I don't know where Dr. Smith is. My fellow panelists have done an awesome job. So I think I'm just going to highlight two concepts that I've heard throughout this conversation. I think the word process has been used purposefully and intentionally because it is a perspective collecting and analysis process. And whether you're in Philly or you're in New Jersey or you're here in Pittsburgh, the intent of the process is to elevate voices, right? We want to elevate voices so we can collect perspectives. We want to elevate voices so we can analyze what thoughts are going on in our communities. And we want to elevate voices so that we have a collective perspective of how our community feels about our educational institution. I've always said to people, particularly when I'm in the hiring phase, that if we hired 5 Ron Davises, you've made a mistake. You already have 1 Ron Davis. You want to hire 5 other voices or 5 other mindsets to kind of complement or supplement my voice or my thoughts. And I think this process of engaging stakeholders is similar to what we do in the hiring piece about collecting other perspectives, supplementing the information that we already have to help us have a clearer picture and a better understanding of how our community perceives our institution. So I think that that's I appreciate the word process that has been used. I would offer this idea that the process elevates voices, and then procedurally, and again, this is just one of my most appreciative moments, as everyone knows that's gone through this. You're collecting perspective, for your self-study so that you can present to Middle States and the visiting team, while at the same time, the process has a team of people come to your site to validate the information that you have collected. And I most appreciate on the validation side of the process, whenever the team randomly picks kids. The student is, for everyone's aware that, there's two engagement opportunities in the site visit where, the organization selects students to be interviewed, but then there's also an opportunity for the visiting team to randomly pick kids. And I so appreciate that second option where you can randomly pick kids, because I think that's where you get the most authentic and genuine input and feedback about a school. So I think any opportunity you can to elevate voices helps in the process.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Davis. Now we'll move on to our next question. Given the fact that MSA accredits many different types of institutions, including public schools and school districts, can you share how the accreditation process was designed and adapted to meet the unique needs of your district or school? And let's start with Dr. Newell.
Earlier, I had mentioned that we began individually accrediting our high schools. And Dan Rufo, our accreditation officer, understood that I want to say leveling the playing field and the word equity was starting to become a buzzword. And Dan, in his wisdom, said, hey, maybe you all should consider moving to the Achieving Excellence system-wide. That was the very first large adaptation we went through when we decided to switch. And the first group involved 15 high schools, and not one high school is alike. We just even now have onboarded our system group 2, which are now 14 high schools. And next year, the next group of high schools, I believe that it will be 19. So that was the first adaptation to our process. And then another thing that I appreciated about Achieving Excellence system-wide in reviewing, because the district has to do a self-study as well as each school. So really last year, it was 15 different self-study documents along with the district self-study. And what Dan did, he sat with myself along with our external coordinator at the time, and we identified which standards that the schools should not really respond to because it's not something they really control. And that took a weight off of us as the district because, for example, the finance standard, that is completely, frankly, it comes from the district. And so rather than have our schools write to that standard, we write to the standard and then a district self-study. So there are 12 standards. And one of the things that was adjusted is that the schools write to 7 standards in their self-study, while the district responds to all 12. So we thought that was good. And we also appreciated the half-day visit at the high schools. That half-day visit really focused on the health and safety of the building, the governance and leadership side of the building. But it was very, I think, palatable for our high schools to know that it was a half-day visit versus 3.5 days. But then the district said, well, wait a minute, they're with us for 3.5 days? Yes. Because we are the ones under the microscope that are, being more deeply examined to make sure that what our schools are doing and saying in the self-study aligns with the district, and what the district is saying in the self-study aligns with our schools. So I would say those were the major 2 milestones that we accomplished. And so far it's been going well.
Thank you very much. Dr. Smith?
Yes, I think, I'm thinking back to our process a bit, and I think what really was most helpful or reassuring, I guess, as you're going through the process was the conversations that happen literally during the visit, the site visit portion, where, the data is being crunched, we've identified some goals, the goals are being massaged or evaluated by, your visiting team kind of saying, maybe this wording or this tweak or whatever, but the constant conversation is, what is it that you want to improve, right? So we all have been in, I think probably everyone on this call has had some aspect of a data element that came up through surveys that you weren't necessarily seeing coming. And you kind of say, wow, okay, hey, we're getting this feedback. What are we going to do with it? But the other piece is sometimes the accreditation process is about giving you an additional element of agency to bring to your community and say, this is why we're doing this. We had outside evaluators come in and agree that this is an area that can really impactfully improve our school or our program for our students. And I feel like, I know we've said process, and collaboration over and over again, but it is. And I think that customization, in my particular district's case, we're a high performing district. And so sometimes folks have a tendency to kind of get back on their heels a little bit and be like, yeah, we're all good. You know, there aren't really areas to improve. And of course, when you're, you know, charged with being an administrative leader, you don't see it always that same way. And so that ability to say, hey, how do we navigate, you know, improvement when we know there's room for improvement, but we're trying to get our community to understand it. Sometimes having, you know, the 4 visiting professionals or the 5 visiting professionals come in and stamp your thoughts about or what your data is suggesting where you need to improve, giving their additional stamp of approval and ultimately the middle state stamp, really becomes a customized process. And like I mentioned earlier, it is for our district, our strategic planning tool. So I really felt like it was essentially customized from the get-go. It's not, it doesn't discount any of the data that you get, but because you have practitioners and colleagues coming into the process with you, you really get to look at it through your eyes, your team's eyes, and then independent evaluators, but who are also in the field and get it and say, yeah, this is really going to be an impactful process for you guys if you go down this path. And that's what I'd say. It's really the customization aspect.
Thank you very much, Dr. Smith. Dr. Davis?
So I'm going to pick up where Dr. Smith left off with one of his terms of strategic planning, because I think that has that concept is where we found the most adaptability to the process. As an organization, we find value and we have implemented a constituent-driven strategic planning process for decades. And that process is very similar to the self-study process of middle states. Different, yet similar. So the strategic planning self-study process allows us to shape the goals and direction of the district. Like I said, our middle states process right now is just isolated to the high school. If we move to a district's or a systems level accreditation, we could probably do a better job of aligning the two. But if you could imagine being the high school principal and you had 2 or 3 different improvement plans or your strategic plans that you were trying to implement or manage, it becomes quite a challenge. So I think what we most appreciated is the ability to align the constituent-driven strategic planning process that the district undertakes with the self-study process that the middle states require, the middle states process undertakes. And I'll add on a 3rd layer to that, as Pennsylvania leaders are aware of. There is the comprehensive planning component that is required of Pennsylvania school districts as well. So the ability to align those 3 different strategic planning initiatives to come up with uniform goals to provide clear direction so we're all rowing the boat in the same direction has probably been the most appreciative means to adapt the process. And it's all under this umbrella of continuous improvement. Whether you're going strategic planning or you're going comprehensive planning or you're going with self-study planning, it's all under this umbrella of continuous improvement. You want to be able to incrementally improve your organization. And the only other idea that I would share, and I mentioned it early on, that we thought was pretty valuable and helped us as an organization is participating in this program of distinction opportunities. Our community finds a lot of value in a number of our programs, school counseling as an example, or our music program. And the opportunity to benchmark our programs, which our community thought were pretty strong, against excellent standards, and then be able to validate those programs back to our community, I think was really not a morale booster for the faculty, but a feather in the cap for the community. So really do appreciate the opportunity that the program of distinction process provided for our community to receive feedback about some of the quality programs that exist.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. And lastly, Mr. Fleming.
I agree with everything that's been said. I think that was pretty extensive. I would just add a couple technical things about how the process was adapted and designed. I think as an internal coordinator, as somebody who served as an internal coordinator twice, for a systems-wide approach. I think having the middle states support is really helpful. And I think that is a way, I mean, every district approaches it differently, but if we ever had a question, if we ever were while we were going through our process and our committees were meeting and going over the different standards, it wasn't in isolation. There was always somebody there to talk to and get support for. So I think that kind of adapted to some of our needs. We as you go through the process, more and more questions come up. And so there was always resources to help with that as well. And I would add that, and then I would say I agree with what Dr. Davis was saying. I think as a school leader myself, when I set my goals for the year and everything, we are using our middle states goals as part of our school level goals. And what I think that has helped with, which Dr. Davis was saying, it really kind of has unified us as a district because you are now collaborating a whole nother level with fellow principals, with district central office administration, and everybody seems to be very focused on the same things. So it's not just each school in isolation. You really now have an approach, and I thought those were two things.
Thank you very much. On to our last question. Planning for the future is a major part of the accreditation process, and middle states districts and schools are committed to continuous improvement as evidenced through the objectives they've set as part of their plan for growth and improvement. Can you share a bit of how the plan for growth and improvement has impacted your district or school? Dr. Smith?
Sure, I'd be happy to share a couple concrete examples. So one of the plan elements that came out of our study was a need for better communication. I think that's kind of a perennial piece that comes up when you survey families. And for us, the incremental improvements on that, it went from, hey, let's look at our branding because we are all over the map, different versions of our logo and that sort of thing, to, again, this was 7 years ago, let's get a little more focused on our social media presence and get people on board, our teachers, and really celebrate what's happening inside our classrooms and get that out. That later evolved into podcasts, a totally new website. During the pandemic, it became video messaging from me, all part of a stream of incremental improvements along the line with just a conversation about, hey, your communication game could be picked up in district. When we looked at our career readiness, we knew that technologically at the time, though we were an Apple one-to-one district for 10 years, we really had no, at the time, computer science or engineering programs or anything. And now, we have entire engineering pathway and computer science programs, STEAM labs at both schools. That was a direct result of one of the goals we had set. We're now a future ready school and an Apple distinguished school. Those things came because it was a focus out of our middle states process. And I remember having a conversation, Dr. Cram, who was obviously a leader in middle states, was the chair of our visiting team. And I remember having a conversation with him about one of our other academic goals, which was really, we were seeing that not enough of our students were getting access to or taking advantage of our most rigorous coursework. And I remember having a conversation with him about the soft barriers that impede a student from taking an AP course or taking a dual enrollment course or even taking algebra in 8th grade or that sort of thing. And we really made that a focus for us, looking at our course sequencing, looking at how many courses we offer, what are the incentives or disincentives to a student taking an AP course or a dual enrollment class, or even taking the AP test versus just taking the class. It gave us the reason to get in and dig it all apart, to the point where now 85% of our student body takes a dual enrollment class every year. We have over, I think, 36 classes now that are dual enrollment, and typically near the highest percentage of our student body participating in AP. That came from an evolution of, hey, we need to focus on making sure that our students who are choosing college stay in college when they get there, that they're successful. That's going to require exposure to rigor. The more students who experience rigorous courses, we know the research base says they're going to be more successful. That became a conversation about, literacy goals, PK through 12. We focused on arguing with evidence being the key core skill that unifies a student's ability to succeed, and that can be introduced in kindergarten and exercised as well in 12th grade. So it was every single category for improvement that we had saw a year 1 version, a year 2 version, a year 3 version, but because it's the energies of the district are focused, you really do, it's almost impossible not to see improvement because it just keeps everybody pulling the rope the same direction.
Thank you very much, Dr. Smith. Dr. Davis?
That's the only thing that I would add to what Dr. Smith was suggesting is I couldn't agree more that it really does help with incremental improvement around the identified objectives. The value that I think the plan for growth has brought for our district is it really helped us focus our human energy and our fiscal resources. There's only so much time in a day and so much resources that the district has. So being able to really hone in on strategies that we believe are going to improve student experience or student outcomes, I think is the value of the plan for growth. It does really bring a laser-like focus to human resources and capital resources.
Thank you very much. Mr. Fleming?
Again, I agree with Dr. Smith and Dr. Davis. Just to get even a little more at the nitty gritty of what Dr. Davis was saying, like I agree, it helps completely focus human capital and fiscal capital. But as a principal, I'm going to speak it like when I meet with my superintendent and we talk about our goals, I know I'm looking at my action plans that we created for Middle States for the 7 years, and I'm looking at our goals we're trying to achieve. When I set goals for the school, I'm looking also at the individual schools' data and that sort of thing. But it's helped how it helps that human capital portion that Dr. Davis was talking about is like when you are building your professional, you work with your teachers to build their professional development plans for the following year. We're able to incorporate similar language, which also helps streamline professional learning opportunities within the district. And so, yeah, it just really gives a very nice way and laser light focus for all of us to kind of help. And we know from a principal how we should be supporting our counselors, our teachers, and what they need to do to be achieving those goals as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fleming. And lastly, Dr. Newbill?
The biggest takeaway for us, in addition to everything that the panelists have previously said, is that we were able to align the documents, meaning we have goals and guardrails that our Board of Ed has established, clearly defining the trajectory of our school district, at least all the way out to 2026. And what we did was, with the plan for growth and improvement, our chief, Dr. Brooks, made sure that as we were working with our schools to develop their plan for growth and improvement, they are directly aligned with the goals and guardrails that have been established by our Board of Ed. I think another bigger takeaway is that with the development of the plan for growth and improvement that includes the action plans that was just mentioned, I and the schools have appreciated that, yes, we have these plans, but again, it's that long range looking ahead, specific steps, specific resources. So no more broad brush statements now. Now you're getting into the weeds to be able to progress monitor specifically where we at in achieving our objectives. So that would be the biggest takeaway for us.
Well, thank you, Dr. Newbill, for your sharing that. And I would now like to thank our panelists, all of our panelists, very much, and turn the webinar back to Mr. McCorkle. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ferris, and thank you again to all of our panelists. That was such a wealth of information, and I hope that everyone learned a little bit more about the Middle States process and all of the benefits associated with that process. And that was such a rich discussion that we have actually come to the end of our time together. So I apologize that we were not able to get to any of the questions on this webinar. But as I said at the beginning of the webinar, we will be following up with everyone individually, and would love to set up a phone call with you to talk through any questions that you have. Additionally, today's session will be available on YouTube, and we will send that link out to everyone so you can rewatch. And if you have questions that bubble up later on, feel free to send those along at that time. What I'm going to do now is go ahead and put the contact information of myself, Dr. Ferris, and our panelists up on the screen. And you can feel free to reach out to any of us individually as well. And anyone would be, more than happy to respond to you and ensure that, you get your questions answered.